Hello, everybody, and welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl, number 57. Podcasters talk podcasting with other podcasters on a podcast. So that sounds thrilling, doesn't it? It's a real time for podcasting in the cultural world at the moment. For those of you that are UK based, you've probably heard of The Rest Is. It's a brand run by Gary Lineker. The rest is entertainment, the rest is football, the rest is podcasting, the rest is history, the rest is economics. You name it, there's a podcast for you. But also things like the news agents and the other football podcasts that are around. There are some podcasts doing huge numbers out there, and also filling spaces like the Albert Hall when they choose to have live shows. Blood Bowl podcasting has been a thing for many, many years, and if you are a frequenter of Mike Davis Sands tableau, you'll know that he keeps a live check of how many podcasts are around and how long they've been running for. And I'm thrilled to say that we have three other podcasters with me here this evening to talk about this whole process of podcasts and Blood Bowl, what it means, why we do it, how it impacts on us, how it impacts on Blood Bowl, all that sort of stuff I thought might be interesting to have a chat about. So I'm absolutely, we do have someone that's got a little bit of background noise coming in. We'll see if we can get that next, but if not, we'll all just live with it and I'll try and take it out in the edit. So I'm very pleased to say that first of all, that to my side we have No Bribe Fowl is back on the show. Hello, how is things going?
Oh, it's going good. Excited to be here.
Turnover, I believe, is your particular vodcast brand.
Yes.
How long have you been running that?
2 years and change, coming up on 3. Just kind of started from scratch on it, covering local U.S. tournaments. I really wanted to give the Europeans kind of a window into what goes on in America that doesn't get reported on a lot. To sort of show that the scene exists. And lately, I've been striving towards bringing everyone together, I guess, being able to interview people from all over. I want to homogenize the scene.
Now, is it fair of me to say I've advertised you as perhaps the new kid on the block for us four, or the smaller, younger little podcast thrusting their way up through the soil of Blood Bowl?
Don't say
It feels like a zine almost. It's just kind of an indie thing. I've kind of been doing whatever I'm gonna do, but I think that's probably reasonable.
Well, always welcome on the show. Kilowoggy, how do you feel about somebody finally bringing American Blood Bowl to the podcasting world?
I think we've been doing it for a little while. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Not now, according to the tableau, we are not the longest running. I know that is sacrilege to say Mike Davies has something wrong, but
Shocking. I won't hear it.
it was, if I remember correctly, Tackle Zone out of Australia, then 3 Die Block beat Slurpcast by 1 month, and then there might have been 1 or 2 after us or before us, and then us. But we're the longest continuous because I think we've missed a month twice by a couple of days.
In
But
how
we've
many
been doing
years?
it 13 years, I think.
So really the granddaddy of podcasting in the Blood Bowl space.
At this point, yeah.
And has the lineup of the people on the podcast changed?
No, it's just been Scott and I the whole time. We've had, people come on and off, but it's just been us the whole time.
And you go out entirely as a podcast, don't you? Because I know No Bribes stuff mostly goes out on the VODs.
Yeah, we have started sending the podcast feed to YouTube because it automates it now. I haven't really gotten into that. I've been meaning to do it more because apparently if I put an animated GIF instead of a regular video, it doesn't close out or something if someone's listening to it.
Right.
I'm old. I know how to do a podcast, and that's pretty much it. We've done some video stuff. I've done streaming. It's all been fun, but the podcast is hard enough to get Scott and I scheduled half the time with his kids being teenagers.
Yeah, scheduling is an issue. It's one of the reasons I've always been honest is why One World, One Blood Bowl goes live on a Sunday night. It's partly because I find that convenient, and partly if I just go, no, it's always then. Can you make it or can you not? It just removes that concern of, how do I fit these 4 people together? And one says, well, I can do this 2 hours on a Tuesday. Great, that's really useful. How do I fit that with 3 other people? So I picked a Sunday night, which for UK people, by this time, mostly the weekend's done. So some people can find this available. And for those not in the UK, sorry.
We've been doing a World Cup report for years as well. Initially it was Drew and I, but then, Drew got busy with his work. So Tim came on. And then we've relaunched it, even though there's no World Cup currently. You can see behind my head backwards, but
Foreshadowing.
I know.
Yeah.
But where I've been traveling so much and been doing, World Cup stuff and everything, like we haven't even had time to schedule that. So it's hard. You want to do stuff, but it's hard getting real life people, even two people, scheduled. So absolutely having that set time is much easier.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful that people give up their Sundays to come on the show
Mhm.
when I'm just unreasonable and say it's then or you don't come.
Yeah.
And it's great that they do. So I'm really grateful to you three for coming. Now, it has been mentioned you've been very subtle with your um, noting of your involvement in the American World Cup bid. So let's briefly touch on that. You're part of that team, I believe.
I'm heading that team. Yeah, it's my baby. I've been working on it for 5 years, and then got the crew together a couple years ago, and we've been working on it since then. And obviously, we put the bid out.
There's absolutely no point trying to persuade me because I don't get to vote on where the World Cup goes, which
Yeah,
a couple of people have spotted I've mentioned once or twice. But 100 people do. There are 100 people selected in the world of Blood Bowl with the right to decide if the Blood Bowl goes to Dallas under your stewardship. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, very briefly. Why should they vote Dallas?
I mean, to me, the main thing is it's the World Cup. It should be out of Europe once. And if it's ever going to be out of Europe, then America is the most logical choice because of the vast population of people here and the players. We're either number one or number two NAF coaches, depending on how you look at it. And then if we do get the bid, it'll be an amazing time because I'll be running it. I can guarantee that. And like I said, it we may not get as many Europeans. I understand that. But we'll still get 1,500 so coaches, I'm sure, which will still be the second largest, World Blood Bowl event ever. And just want to really put the American scene on the table and allow us to have one time everybody come out of the woodworks and come to the World Cup. And
Certainly,
Dallas is a great city, easy to get
certainly,
to.
it did seem that the Spanish scene caught fire around the Blood Bowl
Yeah,
World Cup there, and they really massed up their numbers, and a huge number of Spanish people came along. Do you think it
yeah.
would?
If I remember correctly, they got like a 50% increase on the number of NAF coaches.
Yeah. Do you think
So
it would
that
have that
took them.
impact in America,
Oh yeah,
even with
easily.
that dissolute player base?
Yeah, because the thing about America is absolutely it's huge. There's no questioning that. But the central locality of Dallas makes that almost a moot point. There are direct flights nonstop from everywhere in the US without doubt. Even most places in the world have nonstop flights. And then, if someone can't afford to save up $200-300 to travel from say Maine or Washington to Dallas in 3 years, they probably shouldn't be coming anyways. Um, but obviously, we're trying to do everything we can,
You
and
heard it here first, folks. America, not a country to be poor in. If
it's
that's a
well, this is
surprise
true.
to you, it
Sad.
wasn't. It wasn't to me.
No, I mean you have plenty of time to save up, and it's just a matter of. I also am very big on growing a community, and give me a couple of years, I will grow that community, no question. I
Um,
ran
I,
a whole bunch of tournaments in new states this year and dragged people out that had never played in a tournament before. They're there. They just need an incentive to come out.
I don't want to spend too long on the World Cup. I may
No,
actually do a whole episode where we look at the various bids and that process. That might be interesting.
sure.
Sort of end of January, coming February, because that's when the decision is, isn't it? It's a couple of weeks into February.
Voting ends January 31st.
Okay.
And, voting begins, sorry. Voting begins January 31st or February 1st, however you want to look at it. And then it ends February 15th. And that's when
Right.
we should know.
The day after Valentine's Day. But I will raise one question which I have seen raised a fair bit.
Sure.
And as my partner's from the great state of Texas, though from Houston, and as I've actually been to Dallas, where my uncle ran a ballet company, I think there, the first one ever in
Right.
Texas. I know the city a little bit myself. Some people I have heard saying that they would consider a World Cup in Dallas to be a safety concern. Do you think that's
I
a reasonable criticism?
I don't think so. It's no more unsafe than any big city. If you go to the wrong part of town, you might have issues. Sure. You go to the wrong side of Paris, you're going to have issues. It's just the nature of a big city.
Okay.
Now, of course, people are worried about gun safety and stuff like that. This is not the reality of the country. Obviously, things happen. We can't control everything. The venue's in a very affluent neighborhood. It's not going to be near any type of situation that's going to involve weapons. And the vast majority of any weapons activities are domestic disputes or, drug related or stuff like that. And it's just not a concern. I've never had an issue my whole life here. I don't know anyone that has had an issue of any
Okay.
sort.
I just thought it was reasonable to throw that in front
Oh
of you,
yeah,
as I have seen
absolutely.
that around a little bit. So there
And
you
we'll
are.
have
Two
security there.
exclusives. Firstly, don't go if you're poor. And secondly, no, there won't be gunplay during the Blood Bowl. Two
Right.
big takeaways there from me, certainly. Now, I've kept him waiting this long because I am that toxic. Some of you may have noticed we have another new guest on the show, as well as Kilowoggy. I'd love to say a huge welcome to Bonehead Ben, a man who I'm sure needs no introduction to the vast majority of our listeners and viewers. Hello, Ben.
Hey everybody, Ben for the Burning Podcast, and I'm very happy to be here today. Absolutely over the moon. I've been talking to my wife like all day. I'm like, I get to talk Blood Bowl with people tonight.
You certainly do. Not something you're unused to doing, I would suggest.
Oh, it's my favourite damn thing. Although, my new favourite thing is you counting us in at the beginning of the show, just like Wayne's World. I was watching it, and I was like, this is fantastic.
Trained professional, you see,
Quality.
and I bring some of that to what we do in Blood Bowl.
Yeah, gonna rob that for our podcast now. Like, just, count Ben in when he's late.
We're live. Do you do
yeah.
live shows on the Bonehead podcast?
Yeah, we generally speaking do every Monday night we play a game. So we've got Monday Night Blood Bowl with the logo absolutely ripped off Monday Night Football. And we play through a league. So we do those. As for actual podcasts, we've done a couple of live ones, but I mean, we were talking about it earlier, scheduling multiple people for a podcast can be a bit of a challenge. And your point of picking a day and making it the day, that's why we've been able to kind of put Monday Night Blood Bowl on so regularly until December when everyone got ill.
Yeah.
But it's the best way to do it, I think. So yeah, we do live games, not necessarily live podcasts very often.
But that's not the extent of the Bonehead brand, is it? It's there's many strands that the Bonehead podcast does within the week. There's a lot of content coming out of you. So tell me about the podcast. Why and how did that all come about?
Man, it's years ago now. It was actually before COVID, although COVID's when we started putting stuff on YouTube because there was no league, so there was no, so we had to find something else to do. But yeah, me and Rich started the podcast a long time ago. We used to use microphones plugged into an iPhone that we used to sit around and record in his kitchen and stuff. And then COVID hit and we started going virtual for everything. And then we started playing with YouTube. And then honestly, like, I grew up playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, and I love the Pro Tour coverage that they do. It's just my absolute favorite thing. So I've always been like, I want to stream Blood Bowl games. I want to see Blood Bowl games streamed because I want to watch a game. Like I want to chill out and watch Blood Bowl and not have to play it. And so doing that streaming thing has kind of always been my thing. So that's what we've been working on for the last few years, is just like having fun, talking Blood Bowl, and then playing games. And honestly, Monday Night Blood Bowl has just been the best thing, because we get a whole bunch of people join us, and it's like you're playing your league game and everyone's just there with you, but you just like everyone's just at home watching on their telly and just like abusing in chat. It's fantastic. Like it's the best way.
So that definitely was the start of it. Was you wanting to stream Blood Bowl, wanting to have that content out there? I mean, I have to say that's exactly why One World, One Blood Bowl is the way it is. It's the content I wanted to watch, and I didn't feel was out there. So I thought, well, then I'm going to have to go and make it, aren't I? And then I had to sort of think, okay, what skills have I got, and what do I need to make the sort of thing I want to watch happen? And luckily, it more or less sort of peters along. Kilowoggy, is that what all those years ago when you were, sending stone tablets to each other about what the podcast would be? Is that why you did it? It's just that it wasn't out there?
I mean, at the time, there was Zlurpcast, Tackle Zone, Three Die Block. There were a few out there, but it was just something that we wanted to do. I got to listening to podcasts because at my job, I listened to 16 hours of podcasts because I played everything at double speed. I had a lot of time to kill. So I got into podcasts really heavy, and I was like, oh, this will be fun. And then we knew a guy who had recording equipment. So we're like, hey, why don't we try it? And I was like, well, if we're going to try it, then we need to have a niche, because we're not tactics. We're not that good. We're kind of newish. and blah blah blah. We don't travel to tournaments because there was nothing in the area at the time. So we went with the fluff, and when we latched onto that, we just started doing it, and we just enjoyed it. It was fun, and it was really neat getting feedback, and I was having fun, doing all the audio and everything. It was new to me, so it was not so much a lack of something out there. It's just that we felt we had something that we could offer, and we have.
Hmm. Ben, what's your background? Because you seem very natural on a camera. Let me tell you, as someone who's a trained actor, you're a very good natural presenter. You seem very comfortable with a camera on you. Is that part of your world?
No, not at all. I came up through retail management, and now I work in labour forecasting and stuff like that. So I do workload measurements and modelling and things. But I was retail management, which is all about engaging with people and just So I've never done anything like this before until we just started doing the podcast, and it's just fun. It's
Has it
just
fed
fun.
back
It
into
makes it
that
easy.
part of your life, do you think?
Yeah, hugely. So before Christmas, I spent my last week doing briefing and engagement videos because the rest of the team were like, "Oh, Ben, we need to do some stuff. Like, could you do some stuff?" And I was like, "Yes, we can do some stuff. Like, that's not a problem at all. Like, let's go." So yeah, it's been really good. It's been like an interesting little cycle because I'm a bit of a tech geek growing up. Like, that's what we used to do, right? If we weren't gluing high elves to bases, we were gluing computer pieces to other computer pieces. So like, I enjoy figuring out how stuff works. Now, one thing that annoys Brushtithe, one of the co-hosts, is that I'm the kind of guy that gets something to like 8 out of 10, and then I move the hell on to the next challenge.
Yeah.
And he's like, right, this needs to be a 10 out of 10. We need to get this better. We need to get this better. And I was like, oh, we could go do something different now.
Yeah.
So a lot of like, I know, Rob, you were sort of saying earlier on, like sometimes you have to like bin off content because you're not quite happy with how it is. Like my experience has been very much a case of like, you know what? Nothing is perfect. No one ever gets it right. It's never as good as you want it to be, but doing it and like just iterating is the only way to kind of farm through it. And that's what we've done. Like with all the camera stuff, with all the games, like some of our first ones were absolute trash. I'm happier with the quality of the games that we do now, but there's still a billion things I'd love to do differently, and it's always going to be the it's always going to be the case.
I do feel when it comes to particularly live games, there hasn't been perhaps the sharing of good practice across that there could be. I went to an event in Bexley, the Bexley Reapers it was called, and they have a habit of streaming their league games and also streaming one game at a time from this one-day tournament. And I had a little peek at their setup because, of course, I was interested in how are they commentating. And one of the people was knew some Blood Bowl, and the other person knew how to use a microphone. But one innovation I spotted that was great, they had dice trays to roll in with cameras specific for the dice trays. But then cut it so that basically only the dice appear, and they appear overlaid over the board. So you didn't have to have a separate little box somewhere on the screen to show the dice. The dice just naturally appeared as they would on, say Blood Bowl 2 or a Blood Bowl 3 client, in places people are used to seeing them happen.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's something everyone that's streaming games should be doing. And I know I've seen it before, but I didn't know how it was done, and they explained to me how it was done. I'm not that technical. I'm an actor. My background is talking to people. But even I could make it go, okay, that makes sense. I see how you've done that with, color coding the background out, and hence only the dice appear because they're a different color to the mat. I just thought that was really nice and a sort of innovation that if we were sharing it across everybody, might see sort of everything move forward at the same time.
The Angry Joe show did that, and then we were live streaming something, and they flagged up to us. And then while we were streaming, I had to play. We cut some green screen stuff. We had to go, but I couldn't get it dialed into the way where I kind of thought it was good enough. And then I kind of like, right, let's move on, because it's a cool idea, but I never managed to get it working, and then have another time to play again. But it's a cool shout.
But also from the live games, you've also, I mean, the Bonehead I think of as certainly when something happens in Blood Bowl, it tends to be you've got a video out that day. So is it do you just come home from work and it's another job, right? Hang on, something's happened in Blood Bowl. I've got that on my Twitter feed. I'm going to do 2 hours in the studio now, or
I have a wonderfully patient wife, first of all. I mean, we were talking today because like every time we go away on holiday, Games Workshop drops like a release or preview or something. So we've had it on like three holidays. I've done a video from Scotland, from Italy. Ooh, I can't remember where else we've done it from, but it's like she's quite happy because she's a bit of a geek too, so she'll go read or play on the Steam Deck or something. But no, it's just through like, so today the almanac went on pre-order, and it took me 27 minutes to film it, edit it, get it out, and get it on to the podcast feed as well. Which is just through the fact that I've done it 1,000 times now, and because my part of my like actual role as a human is in optimization, so I've always been very good at finding a way to do something with cutting off like 2/3 of the work. Doesn't yeah.
I mean, I'm very lucky in that mostly I haven't had to do a lot of editing. There's been a couple of times with sort of people's children in the background that I want to take out for privacy reasons, or if the swearing got just too strong, sometimes I've felt the need to cut a couple of them. But other than that, pretty much I let whatever happens just go out live, and I think people have some level of trust in that. Do you do a lot of retakes, a lot of reshoots, guys? Is it, or are you just as live and it'll be what will be? How edited are you? How sculpted is each bit of content? Let's go behind the scenes.
When we first started, I would go in and I would cut out every cough that Scott did, every long pause. I'd make sure everything was perfect, and a 1 hour podcast would take me an hour and a half to edit. And eventually, I was just like, I don't care. Like, it's not worth it. So the only thing we redo now is the beginning, because anytime it's Scott's turn, he just flubs it up completely and always does the intro to 3 Die Block. But like, even this many years on, he still does it. But that's really the only thing that we redo. Every once in a while, like you said, if there's a kid saying something, if there's a something inadvertently that we weren't supposed to say yet because we may have advanced knowledge, we have to be like, oh wait, I can't say that yet, and then go back and cut it. But for the most part, our show is 98% just as it goes.
Just two blokes talking about Blood Bowl.
Exactly.
No, Brad, yours is much more visual. Do you feel the need to really, make sure you've got the shot you want, and then I know you drop stings in between different little bits of content, don't you?
Yeah, it depends what the particular piece of content is. I started off only doing tournament coverage pretty much. So I would do like a vlog type thing with the traveling there, just trying to give a picture of the full experience, get venue shots, that sort of thing. I do a lot less of that, but it was taking me probably 15 hours of editing to get like a 40-minute video because I was retooling things, tweaking stuff, and I'm constantly learning. This is always a learning journey for me. But yeah, if it's interviews and stuff, I will give them a once through. I'm usually playing Minecraft or something, and I'll just leave it playing, and I'll write down the timestamps I want to cut out or fades or whatever I want to do for it. But yeah.
It's that thing where you're trying to engage someone, think on your feet, and take notes as you go, isn't it? Sometimes you could use, 5 or 6 pairs of hands, but it's just not going to happen. Obviously, this richly pays off the time and the effort we put in the bountiful rewards that we get for it.
Rolling in the money, absolutely.
I suppose, Ben, we do have to ask. You do get an extraordinary number of views. The Bonehead podcast is incredibly popular. Does it mean you're rolling in Blood Bowl riches?
I would absolutely love to be able to do this as a job in any way, shape, or form. But we do good on views. I'm really, 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 really happy with like how much engagement and stuff we get. Like it's fantastic. But YouTube ever so much hates paying anyone anything, which is totally fine. Something you kind of do see in hobby creator land at the moment, like we were kind of talking earlier about like the space and how much content is out there, and I think every channel that I watch has had to do something different over the last year. Zorp is always just like crying because even though he's got 500,000 views, he's not being able to pay anything. So YouTube is not really the place for that until you're doing like, I don't know, millions of views. But I do have to massively shout out like our awesome patrons are the guys who've paid for all of the cameras, so all the stuff that we get to do and play with and stuff is all from them. So like it's really that's what's cool, and that's, I think, just people investing in something that they want to see more of, and that's awesome. We did a we did oh god, I want to say stretch goal because I'm old.
Sure.
But like a super chat goal for one of the cameras, and it was fantastic because everyone was like, no, we want it over the shoulder of the camera. Like, let's go, and we got it, and I ordered it, and it came, and then that was really, really, really cool. But that's, I think, the only way you can kind of use that. I wouldn't even know where to begin to.
So it's very much
turn it
about
into a living.
reducing cost, isn't it, rather than becoming a sort of, Blood Bowl. You're not our first Blood Bowl professional.
Oh, I'd love that, but no. The good thing is, I can happily say that I do very much love my day job, which is very nice and rare. I appreciate, but no, Jesus, no. We went through a redundancy process at work this year, though, and for a second I was like, "All right, let's see if I don't make the cut for some reason, could I make a go of this?" And it would have been diving into all of the other games, and it would have been like multiple channels and multiple videos every day to kind of make that a living. So people who do content have my utmost respect because it is a grind.
I think Rick Reckless got fairly close just during and post-COVID to being able to say he was a Blood Bowl professional with his Twitch streaming. Andy David, I think, like yourself, puts an enormous amount of content out whilst also holding a responsible job. So, and I would suggest that the three of you are probably the most famous faces in Blood Bowl. So if there isn't a living for you three, then the rest of us definitely can't.
I will say that I did win $10 coming in second at a tournament one time. So,
a Blood Bowl tournament gave out money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A Blood Bowl tournament gave.
It was the first time it was like $20 to enter. It was just this random tournament in Ohio, and they were using the match played guy. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? This is so off the wall. I don't understand.
Those are Magic players.
It's like, we just want to do it. Okay, well, I'll put in $20. I won. I guess it was 20 I got back.
We actually did an episode about the money in Blood Bowl because there was a couple of competitions on Blood Bowl 2 that started paying money. On Blood Bowl 3, there's now money that can be won. I won a £45 gift voucher down at Brighton Piers, which I instantly spent on a ticket to go back to the same event next year. So, because it was only for gaming gear from that shop in Brighton. So I thought, brilliant, I'll just pay for next year out of that. So money is creeping in, but
I will, to keep talking about this, I don't make money, but through the podcast, I am able to offset a lot of costs when it comes to swag. So, I can go a little crazy at Oklahoma Bowl because I can then, a lot of times, take those dice or figures and tokens or whatever, turn around, sell them to listeners, sell them to other Blood Bowl people, and approximately make my money back. Didn't happen this year because I went all in and got Charlie Victor weather tokens and Pedro Ramos orc drummer, so I'm still negative from like that. But I just put everything up on bigdealswag.com and try to sell stuff there and sell it to people who I know. And again, it's not like I'm making any money from running tournaments or anything, but it allows me to have a bigger budget whenever I'm running a tournament versus, I only have $100 for trophies or something.
I was quite open about it. I did make some dice for a One World, One Blood Bowl team that was going to the Euro Open. And we used them there and gave them away there to everyone we played. And then I put them up for sale on eBay, and they still are a couple more on for sale on eBay at £10 a pair, which is obviously more than I was charging to make them. And in total, I think I sold 20 sets. So I made enough money to take my partner out for a lovely dinner, which I had promised her. Because I worked out I've done 57 of these. And in terms of organising them, editing them, uploading them, I reckon each one takes me about a day's worth of sort of work in terms of the time and effort put in. And I don't resent that, but she did have the sort of view that, if I wasn't going to monetize it, then at least they could be nice. And I don't do sort of Patreon or things yet.
I don't think there's any issue with an organizer or someone who puts their time and effort into something like this getting compensated. Now,
I mean, it was one meal, and if you resent that for 56 hours worth, well, mostly 2 hours, 112 hours worth of content, then don't buy the dice. It was an entirely voluntary thing.
Exactly.
But we do put a lot of time in, all four of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's very similar to being a TO.
Yeah.
Blood Bowl content is you are it's the quintessential DM persona, right? It's the same thing.
So what's that drive? Why do we, week after week, day after day, sit down and make Blood Bowl content when it's not paying the bills? It's annoying those that we care about. So what's the upside?
Let me
What drives us
Let me
to it?
lead off on this one.
Sure.
I want to add a little bit to what we were just talking about. Um, for one, I ran gutter bowl tournaments, and it ended up out of pocket costing me, I think, like $60. And I made the trophies myself. I picked a convention that was looking for people to host events, so I was able to go in, get a badge for free to that. If anyone who's scared of TOing, thinking it's gonna have to be this giant financial investment, it's not necessarily for something small scale. You can get creative with it. I also want to add that I have been a little fortunate, especially when I was primarily doing tournament coverage, of a few times having people comp things. So comping a hotel room, paying some towards my flight, comping my entry. It hasn't happened a ton. I'm super grateful for anyone that's done it, but basically, maybe in a troubadour esque aspect, support your local content creator. It means a lot, and it's really validating for the amount of time that we put in on it.
Yeah, here was me thinking that you and I were going to have some solidarity because we heard pre-show that both Kilowoggy and Bonehead Ben are on the Games Workshop. Here, have a look at our stuff before it's for sale list. I'm getting nothing here, so I'm
Oh, that
clearly
would make
not.
my life so easy,
I'm clearly not
That
pushing
would
that
make
button as much
my
as I
life
could. So
so
yes,
easy.
support your local content creator. Give me shit. That's not true. I did get a lovely invite to the Europe, and I had to pay for the ticket, but I got a ticket long after they weren't available for sale in case they wanted a whole spare nation. I was going to be part of that. Okay, is that true? Do you, Kilowoggy,
You got
you
your
get
own
an early
nation.
look at the almanac and stuff, don't you, or do you, or can you say?
So if I mean we've said it on the podcast, they do send us stuff for previews. So obviously they're perfectly fine with me saying, yeah, we have, an NDA with them, and we do get certain items early, and sometimes physical, sometimes just electronic versions of, like spikes or almanacs or whatever. But yeah, it's well appreciated. They ask absolutely nothing from us aside from, I guess, through English law, we have to say that we received them if we're doing a review.
Right.
And we do, we make it very clear, like, we are very thankful that they sent it to us, and we will give our honest opinions, and we always do.
I'm quite willing to sell out. I will shill for anyone, but no one's offered.
I worked, I worked a decade on GW trying to get that deal done, and when it finally happened, I was so excited. I was
Um,
like, "Oh my god, it finally worked!"
Excellent. Ben, you do love an unboxing? I love watching an unboxing. Beautiful piece of
Yeah,
content, a good unboxing.
we have to sneak into our. We've got a great little game shop near us, about an hour away from me actually. But they're wonderful guys, and they how do we get round this? They let us paint the store demo copy.
Right.
Is how we get our hands on that stuff. But we would love to get the Games Workshop teams sent because like we love to get them out and play. But
Yeah,
like
that's
when it
amazing. I
came
mean,
to,
with the reach that you've got, that
we had to use the Punga stuff
they're not giving you
for their
stuff
stores.
is amazing, isn't it?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
Like,
I can send you a contact, and
I mean,
it
come
doesn't
on.
hurt.
This is not the time to be shy. You are the industry-leading Blood Bowl podcast.
that's very
When I
kind.
said name a
Thank
Blood
you.
Bowl podcast, people say the Bonehead podcast. That's why I couldn't do this
Yeah.
show without you.
But before, anyway, I will say that the World Cup podcast that Kilowoggy did is my favorite Blood Bowl podcast of all time from the last World Cup. I
Oh,
binged that while driving around because the way the competitive view of that was delicious to me at the time. I was like, this is the zone. And you went through every single team, every single roster, talking about the good builds and the bad builds. And I was just like, I faked traffic jams just to finish the episodes. Tiff was like, where are you? And I was like, oh, I missed my junction. She was like, Ben, you've been to the shops. I was like, yeah.
So you're a consumer of Blood
I
Bowl
have to give,
podcasts, are you?
I have to give Tim all the credit for that because he does all that work. He loves deep diving into rule sets and roster building, and I'm just the idiot there going, yeah, I guess it sounds good. Okay, sure.
Well, I mean,
But what about
that's a fair question. No Bribe's already said he's been, the sort of the live experience of the tournaments, get some tournaments flavour, get those people out there talking about it and his experiences, which has been a really interesting insight. I'm very much, as I've always said, the loose women of Blood Bowl, slightly crossed with Graham Norton as well, I would imagine. But really, I'm not afraid to say the loose women of Blood Bowl. I think that's an awesome show and an awesome format. Kilowoggy, you've talking about the fluff and these, two guys, regular voices, people get to know you talking about that. Ben, what do you see as the bonehead thing? What is it that you guys do? Who are you trying to appeal to?
Well, we're kind of beginner to intermediate, really. So we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Like, we want people to come into Blood Bowl to find us, to just experience a bit of all the different aspects. So whether it's like your crunchy competitive stuff, we start you off with builds and skill development. If you're just kind of league players, again, we do that. We do some games. If you are just, I'm playing for the fun and the fluff version, then we've got we ran a tournament like technically last month because we're not, about mixed teams that, it just is not real Blood Bowl as far as a lot of people are concerned. But we did it. We had 40 something people come, and it was awesome. Like, so we do that first touch aspect, and we want people to kind of watch our games, watch the stuff, and get to the point where they go, that's not quite right. Like, again, I think I've already said, like, I'm an 80, like, I'm an 8 out of 10, generally speaking. And when it comes to my past, I want people to follow the plan 8 times out of 10, but to know those 2 times when to do it wrong. Like, when does Captain Kirk change the rules? That's what you need to be. So if you start out in Blood Bowl, you watch our channel, you consume it all, and you get to the point where you go, I wouldn't have done that play, or don't know, actually that skill stack with that is better here. Then you've done it. Like, you are able to go, okay, I've got this point, and then you just stay to watch people fail at Blood Bowl and have a good time. Like, we want to get more people into Blood Bowl because it's just really good. I mean, we get all kinds of people coming into this hobby, right? Like, you get the 40k refugees, the people who got Blood Bowl as a kid and then went away and came back. Like, that's the biggest thing. And the 2016 edition and the 2020 edition, you guys would have seen, like, brought loads of people back into the game, but also loads of brand new people. And I think, I say our goal is just to play Blood Bowl and have fun with people. Like, but that's what it's become. Is we've got, I don't want to say ethos, but our shtick is start here and find out what you like. If it's hobby, there's plenty of people to go. If it's crunchy BB3 misery, you've got Andy Davo. If it's proper tournament stuff, you've got you guys, and actually find what you like. But we want to be that first kind of, like, I don't know, like, this is why Blood Bowl's great.
I mean, I'm a great believer. I absolutely follow your rule. I've always said that you shouldn't let excellent be the enemy of good. If it's good, sometimes that will do. Pushing on to excellent, great if you can, but sometimes it's not needed. Good is often enough. There was, I'm going to have to mention it, you probably saw it, a Reddit thread saying, will people stop recommending the Bonehead podcast to new players? Did you feel that was fair?
Was that Artemis Black?
It was the Artemis Black, yes.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm actually, over the last year and a half where like we've had our first kid and all that kind of stuff, I've come off social media just out of a case of, like, honestly, time saving. Like, I would just scroll and I've been good. Like, I'm like, right, no. So I didn't see it, but the guys did sort of mention it, or it came up in our Discord, like, here's this stuff. And do you know what? Very much to, like, my previous point, like, dude, if you can see when it's not right, then you're already there. Like, we try not to give bad advice, and the advice we give is from playing Blood Bowl it's not the 10,000 games you talked about having on the Euro Bowl game, but it is a long time, because I've been playing Blood Bowl since, like, the 90s in all its various editions for no reason, just to play Blood Bowl, just because it's fun. Like, so if there is, if, like I said, if we get 80% of the stuff right, it's fine. The interesting thing is that our gameplay is what we get the most kind of, like, that was bad, what are you doing? And it's really interesting because I think we talked about this. I think we had a podcast about this, because, like, Ben and Trips or some of the other guys will come on and play games, and they will make suboptimal plays. But they're doing it because they want to have fun. They want to have fun with chat. It's a semi kind of entertainment thing. And I think that's the point where people will depart from the podcast, because they're like, if they're watching it, they're like, no, I can't handle this. Like, why are you not? Why? Trips, love the man, but I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, stop blitzing with your big guy. Like, first of all, like, come on, dude, like, come on. And I can feel it, and he can feel it, and that's why he does it, and I love him for it. But, like, that's the point. And and that's what some people can't handle. I'm like, that's cool. Go watch one of the BB3 streamers who can't speak because they are enraged. Like, that's cool. Like, go watch the Sage from 5 years ago and go through that. Like that's not what we do.
So is it fair to say that you wouldn't, first of all, use the word expert about yourselves and your Blood Bowl play? Experienced, knowledgeable, but maybe not expert. Is that fair?
Expert tactician, no, definitely. Well, the problem is, I don't want to get any better at the game because the way to play better is to do less stuff. That's the beautiful thing
Yes, it
about
is.
Blood Bowl, right?
Often true, yeah.
I'm
So
100%
the right
with you.
Let them do all
I'm
the
not
stuff.
liking it.
Yeah, but actually, I mean, I'm a Skaven coach, so I
Yeah.
like to do the stuff. And it normally averages out at 4 touchdowns a game. They're not always mine, but there's still 4 touchdowns a game, and it's a great story. And like that's what I want to get because I've
Yeah.
done the crunchy aim small, miss small stuff in my Magic career, like, and I've done that.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I'm going to have a fun story with you. We're going to have a great experience here. If we're playing League, our characters are going to develop, and you're going to be able to go home and be like, oh yeah, like Cuddles the Yeti was just having none of it today. He wasn't doing any of that, and I killed Brady. I'm like, that's what I want to play.
So you're
If I
not
want to play a
seeking that
strategy,
try-hard cutting edge of tactical play.
It's not where I am in my life
Yeah.
anymore. Like I'm a recovering.
And yeah, for the content of yours
down.
I've watched, and I did see Artemis's point, some of the setups that he queried.
Yeah.
It's to give people perhaps a point to go from, and some of them I wouldn't necessarily recommend.
Yeah.
But everything you've ever done, I think, is not only very well presented, but with it comes an infectious sense of enthusiasm, which I think is what sells you so much. Is that what you're sort of mainstreaming to people, is your enthusiasm for Blood Bowl?
Yeah, find out a different way to do it. Like I just enjoy it. So my the whole thing with what we do is just like very much I think what Kilowoggy was saying is like we like doing stuff and we like talking about the stuff we like to do. So we're going to share it, and there's a beautiful like piece where people will just join in. Like they'll comment, they'll have chats, and you end up all you're doing every time I post a video. I'm not posting a video to be like, "Ooh, boo, get views," because this is the wrong place for that. I post a video because I don't have anyone to talk to Blood Bowl about right now because everyone else is at work or whatever. I'm like, I'll post a video, and then people will tell me what they think. And
Okay, but I'm going to have to call bullshit a little bit. Surely there's been at least once in your life where you've thought, if I just put another bit in, this will just scrape over the 10 minutes.
Not really.
Okay.
Interestingly, I dropped a video today, and it was only like 7 minutes.
Right. Because I hear 10 minutes is a
Normally-
magic number to get to on YouTube. Kilowoggy's looking
Oh, that was
completely
from-
confused
that
by
was-
this.
That was from
don't-
years ago. That's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a thing anymore.
Okay, so
I want to add in.
the darker side of this is something I mentioned before the show, so you've had a chance to think about it all. I got a comment on the episode I did about the Hungry rules. Now I was confused as to how I was going to do that, and I talked about it on the show that there'd already been such a furore around it. There'd already been a huge blow up on the discords around this rule set they released supposedly in beta, asking for feedback. But then when they started getting a lot of feedback, they then said, hang on, we don't really want any feedback. We're only going to change a couple of things with tweaks. So lots of people felt very let down by that. And it was also obvious that it really wasn't a debate. It was here is the rule set. We might change a couple of tiny things. So I thought if I just do an episode where we debate, is this a good rule set? What's the point? There's no outcome to that. I'm just going to put more pressure on them. But on the other hand, I felt the community needed a pressure valve to say, here's what some of our problems with it are. So that's what I did. I brought some people on. I allowed them to say, here are our problems with this rule set, and here's why we're concerned. But every one of us said we're probably still going to go. We're probably still going to play them. I hope the tournament sells out. I'm sure it will. It's a big party, not just for competitive Blood Bowl. There is that real split over should the big yearly Blood Bowl party be about competitiveness or should it be about fun? Can they not be the same? Lots of factions in that debate. And most people were very positive about that content. But I did get one response saying that it was just a 2-hour argument with people just slagging off the rule set, nothing productive, and that it would hurt that tournament that I'd put that content out there, and that I had a responsibility as a visible person in Blood Bowl, which interested me. I don't know. Do we feel as visible people in Blood Bowl? We have the oldest, possibly oldest running concurrent podcast, the biggest. To some degree, just the loudest and the shoutiest is what I would call myself, maybe. And no bribe, obviously. You're out there creating content too. Do we have responsibilities? Is that a pressure that we accept?
I think with the reach of my platform, I've been I don't know if I'd say blessed a little bit to be able to kind of voice my opinions more. Um, I I always try to like be tactful about it, but I mean I've been doing a lot more interviews. I want to jump back a little bit and say that it's important to have casuals in any game because without casuals, you don't have people going out buying the new releases just because they look cool, even if the
Yeah.
stats aren't good. I
This is why
know
drug dealers give
Ben
the
was
first hit
talking.
for free. You've got to get them involved somehow.
Yeah, Ben
Or
was
the
talking
rules
about
need to be free.
Magic. I was a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh player, so we're mortal enemies in that regard.
Oh.
But yeah, I think that there needs to be a little bit more room for people to feel comfortable genuinely voicing their opinions. The way I break it down is there are people that have been playing this game for decades, and sometimes people are afraid to voice opposite opinions. And that doesn't mean everyone's opinion is equally informed, but we need players to play. It doesn't mean that people who are hyper casual are any worse or better than people who are hyper competitive. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews lately with, you know, Team USA, Euro Bowl, that kind of thing, Chaos Cup winner, Drakenspear, who you just had on.
Mm.
And all of them try to bridge that gap a little bit. But there are times that I want to ask really tough questions, and even I'm like hesitant to approach topics. But I think we need to be a little bit more open to dissenting views and to maybe modernizing some of our tournament practices and stuff too, which is another one that can kind of hit people rough. I would like to see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I are both very passionate about creating a more diverse, aware, and open environment that everybody feels comfortable playing in. And I think that can be a tough question sometimes that people really don't want to have a look at what those barriers are
Absolutely.
and whether they exist. Which I
It's two
get.
vocal minorities for sure,
Yeah,
but I would love to see more of the esports aspect get pushed. I know there's a lot of people. There's a crowd for, oh, it's just a silly game. It's all dice, you know, whatever. Like to me, the litmus test for if a game can be competitive is do you see the same names popping up in the tops? And you do a lot of the time. You see some variance, but if you're a skilled coach, you're a skilled coach. You can mitigate a lot of it. I always say you can roll an infinite number of sixes, but if you're out of position, you still lose the game.
that's
You
very
know,
wise. Ben, I
but
can tell you want to come in on this.
First of all, I couldn't agree more with I think everything you just said. I don't know what it's like in Exodia Land, but in Magic, anybody with like a 60%, 65% win rate is premium because you've got the the variability. So I agree with that. Like I watch a lot of Magic content, a lot of Magic streamers, and they win 2/3 and more of their games, and they are considered the greatest of all time because you've got that variance. Which I will say, PurpleChest, you guys absolutely crushed it talking about variance on the Euro Bowl.
Thank you.
Loved that. Esports angle, dude. We've streamed a few tournaments. It is a monstrous amount of work. Although these days I know I can do it a lot better and a lot easier. I know I can. Trips won't let me just yet. He's like, Ben, you're doing too much. Like, calm down. Like, but one day I will be able to do it because I'd love that. But the esports thing, kind of talking what we were talking about earlier about like investment in content and time. So my day job is looking at labour forecasting and labour cost, and every time we do Monday Night Blood Bowl or something, I do the hourlies at minimum wage, and I'm like, well, golly,
Yeah, we
it
should all
would have
go and
been
work in
cheaper.
McDonald's.
Yeah, well, actually, it would have been cheaper to order a pizza and throw it in the road. But like, it's going to be for like an esports thing. You've got to kind of gauge where that pot is coming from. So I know Bubble 3 does some stuff, but like Games Workshop, I am absolutely baffled how they've done like the Warhammer Championship for this game, for that game, and I'm like, dude, like Blood Bowl is a game about tournaments and winning.
mm-hmm.
Like, how are you not investing in this? And it's because the third party market
Yeah.
is so saturated. But like that's the thing, and that's I think what
Well, I had a
will stop
conversation
them
with
from the esports
JTY, who
angle.
isn't running Blood Bowl anymore, but was the guy
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
And I mean, he wasn't a particularly pleasant individual to chat to. And there was a lot of me in every conversation with him. And so some of this may just be his bluster about how great he is. But he was saying that if, the average Kickstarter might sell a couple of hundred sets, but they're not producing a box in Games Workshop unless they think they're shifting 10,000. So they're really not bothered by the hit from some of the third-party model makers. Why they don't support Blood Bowl is simply that we've always been a niche game and they don't see us going from Blood Bowl into their other products. That if you end up in this little cul-de-sac that is Blood Bowl, then you realise just how good it is and that you only need 20 figures to go to a tournament. You don't need a whole suitcase. And so we're not that cash generating and we don't feed into their other systems. But that may just have been him, wanting to talk up how brilliant he is and how much he has got them to at least make some money out of it by
He is very
releasing
much that
rule
way.
packs. A hard man to love,
Well-
but he did do some good things for Blood Bowl.
So
And I
will.
believe
Just like
he did Old World as well.
Yeah.
I
Kilowoggy.
wanted to
just like little
your
patches
actual-
or something.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it would be cool. It would be cool to be validated. Just little promo stickers, maybe an exclusive, only sold at GW approved tournaments miniature or something. It wouldn't have to be a huge investment, but I think it would be really validating for a lot of people who.
Yeah, I get that they can't support the World Cup because they want to have the third-party vendors there, and Games Workshop won't let them in the same building that they're in. But
Right.
some support for Blood Bowl does feel a bit weird not to have. Or they do run some Blood Bowl tournaments for those not to be, on Warhammer TV or streamed in some way. I mean, I looked at what Nacon did with Blood Bowl 3, and I thought that was really quite impressive. But of course, their market is, if they can use that to promote the game, they're going to sell more Blood Bowl 3 copies. So,
Right.
which is a live service game, constantly sucking the money for all the little cosmetics. So I guess it makes sense for them financially. And
So
best of luck. I want it to work financially so that there are Blood Bowl games out there for us.
Yeah.
That's good for all of us, as long as I don't
I do
have
want
to
to
buy it.
actually address your question, though.
Yeah, I want to come. Let's come back to the original question. So, Kilowoggy, bring us back on topic.
There should not be any topic that we can stray away from aside from personal attacks on people. Like, if I said Brian 2 smells, I shouldn't be saying that, because that's a personal issue.
But I might have to
I
sit next to
say-
him at a tournament. A bit of fair warning. That might be helpful.
He definitely doesn't, but that's also an issue that you bring up to the TO. Whatever, that's when it comes to a public rule set or it comes to a public offering or anything, it's fair game. There's no reason to get upset about discussing it. And yeah, if it sucks, it sucks. I'm dealing that right now with the World Cup stuff. We get a lot of public discourse and I'm freely open to it. And I want that discourse. I want to know where issues are popping up and how to address it and what we can do better. Anybody with a rule set, and we'll just take that for the main example because that's what it was, you're going to get a lot of pushback with a rule set like that. And of course, it's valid for you to bring it up because they are seen as a giant tournament, and a lot of people will copy those rules if it's popular. And if you get a lot of feedback saying this is not popular, then that will get other tournament organizers going, well, maybe this time we don't copy those rules and we just do whatever we feel.
I think that was a lot of people's fear, was suddenly this was going to be a year's worth of rule sets. We're all going to be following this sort of poverty bowl, as it's been named, format.
Yeah, and there's no reason for us to consider the impact to the tournament.
Isn't it? Because if Hungary doesn't sell out, is it going to be partly my fault? I mean, that was the strong implication. I'd love to think I have that power, but
I'm pretty sure it's going to sell out anyways. Yeah. But if it doesn't, could it be that? Possibly. Could it just be the location? Possibly. Could it be the politics of the location? Possibly. Could it be 1,000 other things? Yeah. But the rule set is existing. All you did was discuss it. Now, if you truly were taking the whole time, just bashing it, not saying anything good about it, not saying anything creative, then you're just being a troll. And that's not something to do. That's what, you should provide constructive criticism. And I'm sure you did. I'm sure that
hand on heart, I don't think that's the attitude we came in with. I think we wanted to express our concerns, not to just devil it.
And that's 100% valid. Yeah, no issue.
So, Ben, have you ever said nice things about something that was actually rubbish? Do you feel that need to big up all the Games Workshop stuff and say, what a great rule, what a great new player, what a great pitch that I can't see the squares on?
Two things on that. One, Brush Tithe would murder me because he is the most anti-corporate man in the world, which I love. It's very, very good. The second thing is, as a human being, I believe that there's, generally speaking, except in some colossal bad periods of history, generally speaking, like there's some good positives to bring out in whatever there is. And you know what? I think that's a great place to start. So the Almanac goes out for pre-order, right? It is going to be a £30 book with this stuff in it and a few extra pages, right? So there's two ways you can view this. You can say, well, this is just a waste of money because you've got all this and 10-page worth of rules there. You know, you'll find them online, so don't worry about it. Or you're like, okay, it's a compilation. If you like collecting it, you can go with that. You know, it's a good place to have it all in one go. You've got some extra rules, which is the first time you've had that in a big book since Death Zone came out, which is wicked, and it supports the game. Like that's cool. So there are two ways to look at it. So I, generally speaking, unless something is quite bad, we'll look at the positives. If something is very bad, we tend to take the very British way and simply ignore it, not get a chance to talk about it, forget to bring it up, and somewhat move on. Because that just seems the more polite way of doing it. Because it's, you know, it's very much to what you guys are saying. Like, is it our responsibility to let things go or to raise things or anything like that? Well, actually, no. We're humans. Like, we want to share our opinions. We want to have conversations with people. And actually, is there any advantage to just, you know, trolling all over something? Not really. You're better off just staying under your bridge if that's the angle. But come at it with like, oh my God, why didn't they do these 8 things that we can think of? Is a fair conversation, because everyone around you is going to be going, yeah, and 9, which I think is what that Eurobowl episode did brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think my view is if I have a responsibility to do anything, it's to Blood Bowl. I mean, I'm quite keen on Blood Bowl. I've been playing it since first edition in 1986. It's taken up a bewildering and unreasonable amount of my life and energy and thought processes. My my daughter's now 19. She can remember sitting in my lap as I was feeding her, hearing, because she recognises the noises from Fumble. So she knows what a POW sounds like before she knew anything of the game, because I'd be bottle feeding her whilst playing Blood Bowl with the other hand. Yeah, I'm that terrible a parent, I admit it. So really, it's been a huge part of my life, and I do feel a loyalty to the game, and I want to keep the game successful. So I do think of all my content, of anything I've ever done in Blood Bowl, I've always, if I have had anything in my mind, it's that. It's try and be good for the game, try and attract people to the game, sell the game, talk up the game, find those positives in the game. But I can't think of you, Ben, particularly. You know, I've never seen a headline in my YouTube feed, Bonehead Ben slams Games Workshop. I'm not likely to, am I?
Well, it depends on what they do with it. Like, obviously, so far it's all been really good. Like, Chorfs are a bit nerfed, but okay, fine. I can see where they've gone. I can see why they've done it. Like, they've done the typical Games Workshop thing of like double or triple nerfing something at the same time, which they tend to do in like 40k and stuff. Like, this rule is broken, so let's change the rule and change the core points. And you're like, okay, just like maybe one thing. So no, if they do something really bad, I don't think I'll be able to stop myself. But while there is a positive, I think it's a good angle to start with, because actually Blood Bowl's just brilliant. And quite frankly, if they change something that's egregious, got it in there. I mean, people are just going to ignore it because it's a game, like which is wonderful. And I know the NAF is like right there, so that if Games Workshop does something stupid, the NAF's going to be able to be like, look, we curated it for 10 years. The players know how to play. Here's the rules. Like, then Games Workshop are not going to swat you because they don't care. So
I mean, what I'm amazed by is how much the NAF, you know, things like if you want to put giants into your tournament, the NAF goes, yeah, do. But things that really do break the game, the NAF tends to say in the end, actually, I know this is in the rules, but we don't think this is a very smart idea.
that's about audience. That's about audience, which I think is something you guys did bring up in the previous conversation. But no problem. I think you were kind of hitting on that. That's something that we don't, I think, address until it's a little bit too far down the lane in some conversations. Because like Eurobowl is a cracking one. They created a rule set, and then said this is the rule set, and everyone's sitting around going, who is it for? Like, tell us the story of this. So the World Cup, like, Kilowoggy, I know you're going to have fun because I know the World Cup is like, you get to run it, but we get to decide the rule set, which I think will save a lot of misery in theory. But like, it's like, what is the purpose? What's the aim? So our tournaments tend to be pauper or poverty bowl angle, because the angle is we want someone who's playing their first 10 game of Blood Bowl to be able to come and have fun, and we want those people who're playing their 100th game of Blood Bowl to know that their edges are going to be able to win. And do you know what? There's something fun, which I think No Bribe's going to love this, about like reading the format and going, right, okay, this is my rule set. These are my victims. I'm going to come there because after round one, all the victim hunters are playing each other, and everyone else who's coming there for their 10th game is playing themselves. So that's the angle. So if someone looked at our rule sets and were like, that is crap, but it's not. It's just not for you. But we don't do a good job, I think, in Blood Bowl necessarily of doing that because there is no standard format. And contrary to, I think, what I heard is I would love a standard format because it would mean people could just choose not to use it as much as they liked, which is what I think would go great in Blood Bowl, because Blood Bowl is inherently feudal because you've got the leagues and you've got I mean, even in England, right? You've got little hubs, and every little hub does it very differently because that's how they've always done it. And I daren't imagine what it's like in the vast wastelands of Texas.
And down in the southwest, of course, you've got people that are using, all 6 fingers to move their miniatures, so that's very different.
Never eat shredded wheat. Yeah, we've got some people from Norfolk in my team at work. That's right. Yeah, so it's like, actually, who is it for? Why is it there? Because on the one hand, I love the idea of an esports thing, and I love the idea of the comp guys having a comp rule set that they know how to learn and play and win. But I think it'd be the worst thing in the world if we stopped. I mean, NAF sanctioning has got so much better over the last few years with Geixo. But like before then, it was we had some real problems trying to get stuff because we were like, well, we want to use the Games Workshop rules that are in this book, and they were like, you can't do that. And we're like, then what are we playing? And it's actually it's about defining your audience, I think, and it's very difficult with the World Cup and with Euro Bowl because we're a big community now, and where it used to be all things in one go, now it's probably too big. And if you're going to cut 10% of 10,000 people out, there's 1,000 people who are going to be PO'd about something.
Yeah. I mean, as I said in some of the feedback to the Eurobowl guys, I mean, maybe it's time that the big yearly party and the big national competitive yearly thing weren't necessarily gelling together as well as they used to. Perhaps that could be 2 different things, because it does seem to be pushing in 2 very different directions at times.
I've been a long time believer that all the majors should have a common rule set. And like you were saying, there should be a general rule set by the NAF saying this is whatever you want to call it, Iron Man or, competitive or whatever nature it is. If you want to know truly how good of a coach you are, these are the tournaments to go to. And they run this one rule set. And every major has this one rule set. So then you can completely compare apples to apples around the world, no question. And I know it's not going to happen because Dungeon Bowl has their final, round.
Well, I mean,
likes doing things.
I've heard an inside whisper that the final round Dungeon Bowl might not have a long future.
Ooh.
Just like the NAFC has recently stopped the final game, and it's now, the winner after 6 rounds, not the 2 winners after 5 rounds playoff.
So
some of
maybe
these old-fashioned things maybe don't suit the future as much as they used to.
Yeah. But and back to Ben's point again, I think if we had that one common rule set that was put out by the NAF, that this is a competitive tournament, and they can change it every year, but it's beginning January to December for this year. Yeah. This is what the rule set is, and then you've got I was for the one time like number 2 Amazon coach in America because I took him to one tournament and won 2 games and tied 1. And that lasted for years.
You're going to love the Eurobowl rule set.
But I'm a big fan of pinball. And pinball has a competitive nature to it as well. And what they do is they have a rolling 4-year drop-off. So the first and second year is 100% score.
Yep.
The third year is 50, fourth year is 25%. And then after 4 years, it drops off. But we have a World Cup. That'd be a perfect time to institute that and have that 4-year drop off. So that when the next World Cup comes around, you can say, this is truly the top competitive Chaos Dwarf coach, or whatever. But unless the NAF completely changes what they are, it's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, there are multiple different types of rankings on the NAF, and
Yeah.
electors can get elected president and change it. Is I guess what the NAF would say about that.
Okay,
Um,
I will.
so maybe that's the next move after a successful World Cup, is you ride that into power at the NAF
I
and
will
revolutionise a
control
model.
everything.
I've long said I think the sort of Avon, I don't know if you have that in the States, but the whole, local person comes and gives you your dice in your hand model. I just don't know how future-proof that is. I mean, it's sweet and it's lovely, and I love knowing who my local tournament organizer is. But whether that level of sort of devolved selling down on the floor is worth it, whether I should pay £10 and get free dice every time, or whether I should pay £10 and then the dice are in a shop and I can go and buy them there, a little bit more money for the NAF, and those that want dice can get them, those that don't want the chemical pollution don't have to. And I still think £10 is a reasonable price even without free dice. So I think there is some modernising there that could be done. The flip side of our responsibility. So no, none of us feel any responsibility to any of you. Go hang. We'll say what we want.
Not a bit.
No. The flip side of that, of course, is what are the changes that this level of Blood Bowl fame has brought to you, your Blood Bowl, and your world. I had a very odd experience going to Alicante, my first time abroad playing Blood Bowl. And every time I turned the corner, it was such a perfect place because it meant Blood Bowl really took over Alicante. In the central area in the evenings, sort of the bars were 50% Blood Bowl, 50% not Blood Bowl. So everywhere you went, there were Blood Bowl people. Every corner I went, people were asking me, saying hello, buying me a drink, saying they liked the podcast or whatever, telling me they hated me, and that I was an arrogant toxic elite that knew nothing about Blood Bowl was another common thing to say. But I did lots of selfies, nowhere near as many as Andy Davo, of course. And that's when the great lie of Andy Davo charging €10 for a selfie came to be.
Quality.
A lie he has never managed to shake off, and which dogs him to this day, and he uses in lieu of a personality. It was, of course, $15 a euro. That's the only lie I made. So certainly he found, and even I found, I mean, I loved it for the first half an hour, and then there were times I was just, trying to find a place to go to the loo, and someone would stop me for a selfie. And there were times it was so sweet, so nice, and yet really mildly annoying. And then balancing that, and so please do. I'm now very used to it, but it was a very weird experience the first time that had been happening. And I know Andy didn't get a moment's peace because he is absolute gold dust. He is the star of the Blood Bowl world. I'm sure the same thing happens to you, Ben. Is that the case? Everywhere you go, are you mobbed by legions of adoring fans?
No, I don't think there's that many people playing Blood Bowl. It's lovely to meet someone who's like, oh, I watched your show, I listened to the podcast, like it's great to meet you. I tend to wear this hoodie a lot because it's the hoodie that is, generally speaking, the top of the pile, and Libby likes to use it to wipe her biscuity face on at the moment. So, like, every now and again, there'll be like someone who is going to one of our tournaments and stuff like that. But like, that is fantastic. Like bumping into somebody who's just like, oh, dude, like I love, I love this. Like that's wicked. We get the thing. I think I think is more likely is the DMs and the emails you get. That's like, hey, thank you so much. Like I was going through a miserable time in my life, and it was great to just get to live Blood Bowl through you for a bit while I couldn't. Or it's brought me back to this, and even like you get some really lovely stuff like, oh, this has brought me closer with my kids, or something like that. And it's like that is like like that's just way over and above what we're trying to do. And like we're just trying to talk Blood Bowl with people and have a laugh. But it's fantastic to hear that stuff because it really makes you think. Like the most ridiculous thing we ever got was it really hit me hard actually. Was we got an email from a guy who was terminally ill, and he said, I've got some Blood Bowl stuff. I'm not going to make it, but it's been really wonderful watching the channel. Can I send you some of this stuff? Because I think of all the people, I think you'll really like it. And it was like that wrecked Tiff because I was like, Tiff, read this, and bless her. I think she was about 4 months pregnant, so sneezing would have made her cry, bless her. But yeah, it was a real hit. Yeah, I've taken a few selfies with people, and it's always been really quite entertaining because it's just odd. But that's more what you get. Luckily, no one's ever really got in the way of me going to the bathroom.
No, Bribe. Do you get stopped now? Do people want to be on your show? Are they coming up to you, sort of hoping you ask them for an interview?
I get that kinda. Obviously, my scope is like the left half of America for the most part.
Small,
I did
small then.
have, yeah, even going into, I did a Boston tournament last year, and there were a few people who, I'll see people, they kind of turn like they recognize me. My biggest issue that I run into, there are so many people I know online, and it's like, oh, your name is like Big Bad Orc 1537. They see you in person, and I don't know your Big Bad Orc, 1537. And then it's like I've hurt people's feelings because I don't know their names.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like we might have talked a million times on a platform. Like I almost wish people just had name tags with their username and stuff.
I mean, sometimes
But
you can guess. Like little Yoshi is about 3'5", so some of the clues are sometimes there in the name.
That means
But-
nothing. It could be ironic.
It could be. Yeah, he could be 6'6" as well, couldn't he? That's
And this is such a problem with the NAF world, right, as well, because you're like, hey, I'm John, also known as, D Destroyer 79, but on Discord, I'm Big Steve. And you're like, Christ.
yeah. We have one particular friend in common, which is Greenskin Phil.
Oh, yes.
And despite going
Chris
to
is
a
a
World
lovely
Cup
man.
with him, I couldn't remember his name the next time I saw him 6 months later because his name isn't Phil.
No, it's Chris.
And yeah, it's Chris. And it's like, really, come on, do us a favour. At least don't pick a name that isn't yours. Call yourself
Wonderful man.
the Warrior or whatever. But come on, calling yourself Dave when your name is Peter, you're just
Should have
trying to
named him
hurt me.
Rodney. After you, Dave.
That's why I try to be Kilowoggy everywhere, because
Yeah.
no one else is taking that. So no
absolutely.
matter where you see Kilowoggy, it's going to be me, unless someone has
Right.
taken it
Side
somewhere.
up. Kilowoggy too.
Absolutely. I've never come across another PurpleChest, but there are certain things where I've clearly signed up for them in the past and completely forgotten what I've done. So then I have had to pick other names because I'm very old and I've been and done things and just forgotten all about it until I turn up there again. So that does happen. Kilowoggy, do people treat you differently with your great voice booming out in the American community for 13 years now? Surely people know this. Surely you get respect.
Sometimes, but for the most part, even my own self, I don't listen to podcasts nearly as much as I used to. So I can't expect people to know podcasts. And when there's a bunch out there, I'm still not going to be expecting people to know who I am. So it's nice when people do, like they'll recognize my voice, or I also will be wearing both down t-shirt, because it's comfortable. And I just want to, if someone is interested in, yeah, is that possibly him? Yeah, he's wearing a shirt, so it's probably him. But all mine is audio. We don't put our face out that too much, but not too much. So I don't get nearly as recognized. In Alicante, I had people coming up to me all the time, and it's, of course, amazing, But as Ben said, it's really the offline communications where you get the emails and stuff. And, we've had people say, I was in the hospital for 8 months and you're the only thing that kept me alive. And obviously, they're saying it, so we have to take it at face value. And I'm immensely appreciative of that. However, if it wasn't us, it'd be something else, But just the fact that,
Keep a
true.
sense of proportion over this. Yeah, probably the doctors were more important in keeping them alive, but you were something that kept them happy and entertained.
Exactly. And that's really all we're looking to do is just make people happy. And if it's to such an extent that people want to come up and say thank you, give us stuff, take selfies, whatever, every single time I'm super appreciative. And, I try to have like a pocket, like at Alicante, I had pockets full of dice and pens, and I ran out of stuff. And people would come up and I'm like, oh, I wish I had something. I'm like, oh, you don't need to. I'm like, I know, but I feel like I should. And they're like, you've given me so much just through the stupid podcast. You don't give me anything. I'm like, fine, but it still feels weird.
No, I have to say I've been gifted some very lovely things, and mostly down to I think the recognition of the podcast. My favourite, I've shown it before, the box that I carry all my dice and stuff in, which is a lovely little wooden thing, was handed to me by someone. Just literally came up to me at a tournament and went, I know someone that's making these, and I think you should have one. And when I said, well, that's great, they went, no, because what you do on the podcast, I think it's, I think you should have it. And they wouldn't take any money from it. I had to look online to find out who made it so I could recommend it to a couple of friends that wanted them. And most importantly, it made Andy Davo incredibly jealous. So that was, to me, that was the perfect possible gift that I could ever be given.
Surely, if they'd taken a selfie with him, they would have loved to take your money.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I ran
you do need it.
into
Team Island famous for just taking pictures of themselves with Andy in the background, so they don't have to pay. There's all
I ran
sorts of ways
into-
around that rule, but that man earns every selfie he takes. His work in Blood Bowl is, he does a lot of content, like yourself, Ben. There's a lot of stuff coming out from Andy.
Andy's cracking. Andy's brilliant.
Very high level
Yeah,
content
I
as well. I would always recommend him, and he's got a good sense of humour. He doesn't mind me taking the piss. I should ask. I hope you don't either, Ben. I have taken the
Oh,
piss out of
God,
you in the
no.
past.
No, it
I
was
always
so funny.
assumed you'd be fine with it.
I was listening to your Euroball thing, and like 8 times you were like, "I'm being sarcastic," and I was like,
I really have to. I do have to flag it up often because otherwise people think I'm being dead serious and that I'm just utterly poisonous.
Giving matches to a 4-year-old was the one where you were like, "No, I'm not really saying you should set your child alight." I was like, yeah, that's kind of inferred.
Yeah, you'd be amazed. And of course, this is One World, One Blood Bowl. I'm very proud of the fact that we do have some listeners for whom English is not the first language.
Yeah.
But I kind of think if people have watched more than one, they kind of get my sense of humour and mostly get when I'm trying to be funny or trying to find a lighter moment in what is otherwise a very live show. Now, I did talk about earlier before we came on.
Before we move on, Steve had a question.
Sure,
Point.
Steve.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say that Kilowoggy. I think our first tournament that we were together at physically was Rocky Mountain Rampage this year.
I believe so.
And I was interviewing him because he won, and I do my little winner interview things. And it wasn't until in that interview you're like, "Oh, I'm so and so, also known as Kilowoggy from the podcast," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's who I'm talking to right now." It just gets really weird trying
Yes.
to, trying to match actual humans with that sometimes.
It does. Yeah.
To
Yeah.
be fair, like Kilowoggy is the James Earl Jones of Blood Bowl. Like you can hear it, and you're like, "Oh." You just get teleported back to the 1,000 hours you've listened to.
I mean, I get recognised for my voice quite a lot. Most people do actually consume this as a podcast rather than a vodcast. And I'll be sat at a tournament sometimes chatting with my opponent, and someone from behind me, where they're not looking at me, goes, "Oh, now that's," and they turn around and go, usually they go, "So you're that bloke that sometimes does commentary for Jimmy Fantastic," which, yeah. But
I had someone
sometimes
one time say-
it's because of the podcast.
I heard someone one time go, "Someone listening to a podcast while we're playing?" And I was like, "No, I'm over here." Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, as you press pause on your phone.
Right.
Now we're going to have to talk about Andy Davo more times on this podcast because as we did, he's just raided in. So slightly, I didn't know that had happened until just now. So you may have heard some of those horrible things we said about him, or just the nice bit at the end. Who knows?
Here he is.
So I did tell the story of me being at a tournament early in December, and the guy opposite me, we were having a nice time, really nice game. I think it was fairly obvious at this point that I was going to win anyway. I think it was to stop my 2-0 rather than my 1-0. And he just looked at me with a very odd look on his face. I said, "So what's that about?" And he said, "Well, I think I want to try something, but I think it's really stupid. And it might be the right thing, or it might just be completely stupid. And if it's stupid, you're going to talk about it on the podcast and make me look a fool in front of my friends." And I thought, fantastic. The fact that I do a podcast is actually getting in his head. I will weaponize that for the win. I didn't, however, several times in the game from then on, every time he did something, I went, "Really?"
Yeah, the old garage.
But I think he knew I was joking. He then explained his plan, and it was quite stupid, but it was also the only logical move in the situation and exactly the right thing to do. He actually then did it badly. Had he just cancelled one more assist before trying the 5-up, then had the 5-up worked, he would have had a 2 die. Because he didn't cancel the assist, it would have been a 1 die, and I had a blodger, so it was still very unlikely. So he sort of did the right thing and kind of didn't, and it was great. I could actually afterwards say to him, "Look, if you'd just done this, it would have been a lot better." And actually, I talked him into doing it without telling me what it was, and it was the right thing, which is great. But do you find that? Are people changing how they play, knowing that you've got a voice and knowing that you might talk about what the game was? Do you think that has altered play against you?
It has
Never for me.
at least a couple times, because I used to take pictures of my games nonstop,
Right.
and then they do whatever. But I would always, if my opponent played particularly what I would consider poorly or suboptimally, poorly is probably a bad term, then I would just focus on the positives of the match. I'm not there to shame people. But I also want to point out the irony of you saying this person was scared of you talking about them on the podcast as you literally talk about them on the podcast.
Yeah.
So
Notice I haven't named
everyone
them.
be afraid for the future. This is totally like, I feel like you're power gaming right now.
Anything you do within 5 meters of me, I consider absolute grist for my podcast. That's true.
Journalistic integrity.
Yeah. Kilowoggy, you don't think it changes people?
No, but also I'm not a great player. I've never claimed to be a great player. So people, if they do listen, they know that I'm generally just there to have fun. And I've never like, oh, this person's an idiot because they did this. I can barely remember matches to begin with. So I take notes, and then even when I take notes, I can't read my own scribble. So I have to come back home from the tournament and try to do a write-up. But I don't think it has ever come into someone's mind of, oh, I'm playing Kilowoggy. I better, I think they might have more of an impetus to win because they want to beat someone that they've listened to. But, the most I ever get is, oh, I'm glad to be playing you. It's really cool. I got to play Scott. Now I can play both of you, something like that. But no, generally, I don't see any change in behavior.
So more that you're a Pokemon and people want to collect them all.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean,
I do
everyone...
all of them. I now makes a lot more sense.
Ben, you've already talked about on Monday Night Football, perhaps people changing to be more entertaining, having fun with what they're doing. Do you think more of that, or are there times you can see the glint in their eye of, oh, I've got Bonehead Ben, this is going to be a scalp?
Well, it's been a while since I've been able to play at a tournament because I'm always TOing.
Right.
So, but the other guys rotate in, and there is a sort of bloodlust that comes over people when they're playing against like Trips or Ben or Milton. It's fantastic. Like there, one guy we had our team tournament in the summer. Trips and Milton ended up playing as odd men in, and some guy was like scalp hunting them. Got to play them in both rounds and was like, "Yeah, you're next." I was like, "Oh, wicked!" So it ups the aggression. That's pretty good. As for the fear of being talked about, I think it's more like, that people get very excited when they beat somebody. They're like, I beat Brush Dive or whatever. It's very cool to see. But where we've streamed events before, that's been really interesting for the players and the players' mentality. That you do it's not going to surprise anybody, but you've got a direct split between someone who's just like, I don't even contemplate, they're blissfully unaware, and they're like, I'm just going to play good Blood Bowl. And then you've got the people who are like, oh man, like people are going to see this, so I need to make sure I'm making the right play. And it does bring around the question around like whether it's fair to do that to somebody, which is, I think, something for the future. And I don't know, no bribe, if we get the chance to do more esports kind of stuff, it's going to become a real thing for people, because it's different when you muck up and maybe the people to the left or the right of you are paying attention because you're crying. But when you're getting spammed, we had a cracker at one of our events where a guy decided that Hackflem had sidestep. I genuinely thought he had sidestep, and he nearly got surfed. And he was like, "Oh, he's got sidestep," and they played on, and chat was just like flaming.
Yeah.
Anyway, this guy changed his name everywhere to be like sidestep. It's a very, very, very cool story. But he's like, this has become my identity now. You broke me. I was like,
So that's been a consideration that we've had with the World Cup too, because we want to bring a lot of streaming to it. But is it ethical to put a camera on the top table or even the top, squad, and be like, watch these guys play? Because I'm not a big fan of in competitive stuff. Like I said, I want all the rules to match. I don't like throwing variables in that could impede or change the outcome. And I feel like there's a possibility that if we do stream a top table, then people could play differently. And, if they really knew it was coming, could they get an earpiece and have someone, give them ideas? We don't want any sense of that either. So it's a weird thing to bring up because it's just inherently not a video thing.
Yeah,
we're trying to turn it into one.
I've always been open if asked that one of the reasons I have 4 guests on is it seems to fit. More is too many. People don't get enough time to put in.
Mhm.
But also,
Definitely.
if I have less, if I get people that freeze. Now, I was very confident this evening. I knew Ben would be good content. I've had no bribe on before. I didn't know you, Kilowoggy, but I knew that with the amount of time you've been podcasting, I should be able to get some stuff out of you.
I would
But
hope so.
there's been times, for example, when I've had, say, 3 dice collectors on, and you just don't know who's going to completely freeze when suddenly there's a camera on them. And even people
Yeah.
that are really comfortable on it, the minute, and those that watch it in the live feed will know this, the minute I say the recording has stopped, you can see everyone's shoulders drop half an inch, and suddenly the smiles come on the faces, and the conversation nature does change slightly. So I'm absolutely certain in my core that people, when a camera is on them, do behave differently to when it isn't. I know
And
that
even
to
if
be
they
the
don't
case.
behave different, it's just a different level of stress
Yeah.
that is putting on them that could influence their gameplay.
And similarly,
And
there are great poker players, and there are great money poker players.
mhm.
And some poker players, once the money gets above a certain level, their game falls apart. And I think it's probably the same with Blood Bowl. You know, some are great on camera, as you say, don't realize it's there, can keep the focus, can keep the pressures where it needs to be. And some it's going to be a factor that just tips them over the edge of whether they can focus, whether they can concentrate. And whether
We've
that's
done a
fair
couple
to
of
put on
things.
people, who knows? Sorry,
We've
Ben.
done a couple of things in the past, which is we always, whenever we do an event that's streamed, we do always give people a button to click to say, I don't want to be on stream. So we could filter that game out because it's very fair to do that. We never put face cams on or audio for players either. Like there's a lot of good 40k stuff where they mic up the players and you just listen to the players play the game. Like I'd love to do that, but it's not appropriate. Like those guys are in their box. Like we also don't know what they're going to say, which is
No,
a
you
bit
do.
of a
Yeah.
yeah. But we had this chat with Ben and Trips because they play a lot of the Monday Night Blood Bowl games. Trips doesn't care. He's like, I play for fun. Yeah, I egg it up a bit for the camera. I always activate my big guy first because I know it really upsets like a quarter of the audience, which is great. He's getting that out of that. Blood Tithe is a brilliant player. Like he's doing really well with his Corn team in the NAF tournaments. But I put a timer on with a countdown, which I love, and it just sends him mad, like which is hilarious when it's for entertainment purposes. But if you were to put that into any kind of like competitive environment, very much to what Kilowoggy just said, like that's not fair unless it's part of the bag to begin with, unless it is part of what you're signing up for and what you're choosing to go in for, which I think is very similar to like the competitive rule set. If you know what you're signing for, like fun Eurobowl, if you know you're going for YOLO Blood Bowl, that's cool. Like you've got to know what you're signing up for, and I think we're all people who've done a lot of tournaments or run a lot of tournaments, and we all know that there's a third of the Blood Bowl like crew who are just very busy with their real lives, that they don't really get a chance to double check everything, their rosters, where they're supposed to be, like, and it's not that they're a failure as a human, it's just that they're bloody busy and this is the way they want to enjoy their free time. So as TOs, right, we have to make their lives as easy as possible within fair reason, but like being like, oh cool, you're on top table and we've got a big screen up here and everyone's going to be watching the game. It's a bit of a crutch slap in some ways.
Yeah, the NAFC
I
once
think-
I was selected to be one of the televised games. And obviously, I doubt there's many people more, comfortable on a camera and in that sort of environment than me. Everyone knows I'm an out-of-work actor, so that's, I'm used to that sort of thing. And even I did find it slightly discombobulating. It was up on a raised stage. It was away from the rest of the gaming. There was a lot of lights on it. It so happened my opponent was using a metal team that was unpainted. So under the lights, of course, all that bright metal was just pinging off. So it was kind of hard to tell who was who, and then suddenly you have to roll your dice in this tray right there and nowhere else, and I found that quite bewildering. And I thought, to someone that isn't used to any of that, that isn't used to lights, isn't used to that level of focus, isn't even used to being up on the stage where everyone can just look up and see you, I can see that for some people that would be a really, a freezing moment. So it's really
I
interesting.
think the counterpoint to all that, though, is that other games do it. And if other games can do it and have bigger attendance, like I feel like it's kind of like chess clocks. Maybe we just do it till it's normal. I don't know. Maybe I'm the bad guy for that.
No, that's what Blood Tithe, his view of that is like, that's like, but I think you guys were talking about like how do we change the ethos of tournaments, not massively, but just how do we make it better, more accessible, just more modern, I guess. He's very much a case of like, well, we just need to start doing it. Like, just start doing it, and that's what happens. But
it's been a hot topic on this show for months now. I don't know if you know, Ben. Chess clocks has just got mentioned, so I'm going to ask your opinion as an industry leader, and bear in mind your role as someone who is visible. You talked earlier. I didn't mention at the time. I thought it was really interesting talking about sort of poverty bowl or low skill amount rule sets being really good for new players because perhaps they don't feel they're as outflanked by people that know exactly what to do, and obviously less impact of people really understanding which skill picks are prominent and can be powerful. Well, how do you feel on chess clocks? They're very anti-new player, aren't they?
I don't think I've ever seen one used at any one of our tournaments. But because we keep the skill packages a little light, like it's TV wise probably 50k and one or two skills under the norm, but we have the same round times, so it's a bit more lenient within that. So we've very rarely have we run out of time, and I think in our history, we're on what five tournaments this year. Maybe one game we had to say that's it now, guys. But we do all the reminders an hour to go and all this kind of stuff so that we keep on top of it. I personally love fast Blood Bowl. So when we used, when I used to go to league, like you learn the players where it's useful to do, but again, it's the thing you have to talk about up front. Because if you're like, mate, like we need to start timing this because it's now 3 hours in, it's a bit contentious.
Yeah.
So when it comes to tournaments, I think if it's standardized and you know it going in, then I think perfectly fine. But because what it does is gives your player agency to go, okay, it's this weekend. This is a tournament. It's using the worldwide standard Blood Bowl rule set for tournaments, and it is a timed event, and there's going to be streaming. Do I want to go to that one?
Yeah.
Yes, I know what I'm doing.
So cards up front on the table. You may not be streamed, but you may if you come to this tournament.
Same with chess clocks. Like we're going to be using chess clocks at this event. You know it coming in. If you turn up and you're like, "What is a chess clock?" That's on you. We'll help you, but we've done everything we can by putting it on the front page of the rules pack and on your ticket bit and on the NAF page.
Now,
Like,
you've
there's only
just
so
been
much
accused
you
in the
can do.
chat. I have to ask: does Monday Night Blood Bowl use a timer?
Yeah. But again, I said that because two things. One, we all like to go to bed at a reasonable hour.
Yeah. Content
And
has to end.
secondly, it's really fun. Like, it's really fun when the countdown timer happens with 30
Right.
seconds to go. Like, that's when Ben starts moving his players. Like, it's really good fun. So we like to do it for that very reason.
I do think there are ways it could be possibly brought in, chess clocks, in a way that isn't as sort of toxic and maybe anti the fun inherent in Blood Bowl that it sometimes feels. Cards on the table, it was on my Christmas list. I now am the owner of a chess clock. So I've never used one, but I do have one. Kilowoggy, our grand old man of Blood Bowl, what do you say?
I've played at 3 tournaments this year that had chess clock at least. There might have been another one, I forget. It's not my cup of tea. Like the main one I'll talk about is Spike, the major up in Canada. And they have it. They also have 40 millimeter boards. So that's a little bit of getting used to as well. And I know going in, they have it. So if we use it, we use it. And I'm perfectly fine with that because they give you like one timeout. So if time runs, you can say, I need an extra 4 minutes or whatever. Never became an issue. I will say of the 6 rounds, at least 2, maybe more, we didn't use them because we're like, I know you. I know you're going to play fast. I'm going to play fast. Do we even need to bother? No. Because it is just that one little extra thing you have to worry about when you're playing.
There are people that weaponize it. We do know people that will do an hour and a half first half if it's their drive, meaning you've only got 45 minutes for your drive in the second half. But also, I want it to be. I mean, I've always admired the way that Bonehead Ben. I may not love all of his tactical advice, but I love the way that there's always joy when he talks about Blood Bowl. It reminds me of the beer and pretzels aspect of it, and I think that's why, despite the big long post saying that Blood Bowl Bonehead podcast is not ideal for new coaches, I may be guilty of sending a few there because I think that level of just infectious joy about all aspects of Blood Bowl is something I want to be part of Blood Bowl still. But some of the sweaty old tryhards maybe have lost a bit of that, and I feel Bonehead exemplarises that aspect of it. Aren't chess clocks anti-fun? Isn't that, I think, is my worry, is that when I put it out, I look like someone that isn't there to have fun.
I've got feelings about that statement.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think okay. So anecdote. We had a 4-round local tournament. It was only league players. They had never played exhibition before, had not done a tournament format, was not a NAF event, but everybody within the first game got used to the clock. Like even the people that were stressing, that were anxious. I think it's just. I don't want to say get good, but like it's kind of one of those things. I
But
think
you
you
just
figure
have.
it out pretty
Right.
quickly.
Okay.
But
I
it's
do like
also
the
like
drama of the slam down the button, that's my turn done, sir. That appeals to
yeah,
me.
I feel like the slow play is one of those things because I've played a bunch of different games competitively, but slow play is one of those things that how everyone else is a bad driver and you're the perfect driver. I think people don't realize, and everybody you talk to, well, I always finish my games. No, you don't. You
Hmm.
don't.
But
Certainly not
again,
if
that
you're
comes back
coaching
to what are you
vampires.
signing up for? Like, what's the expectation of the
Yeah.
event?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a big divide, and we see it really, really nicely, I think, in our community. And whether it's NAF veterans or brand new people, everybody gets on and helps each other, which is awesome, which is why we love doing what we do. But you've got that angle of, are you coming to play in a Blood Bowl tournament, or are you coming to play Blood Bowl?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, that's not the same thing, because I think we've had this massive influx of brand new people from the 2016 and the 2000 and the 2020 version, and there are just loads of people turning up to play Blood Bowl, whereas we've got this historical thing where it's like, okay, if you want to be competitive, there's these extra things that we do that's standardized, and we haven't had that. And one of the things that came out of the last NAF presidency was this, that whole thing around, actually we want to separate competitive from everything else, and it got a lot of fireworks. But actually, that's why, is because actually you know what you're signing up for, and there are two, and like you get good comment is really fair. But if you're going to play Blood Bowl, then you're not going to play a tournament, and
Yeah.
there's going to be, I think there's going to have to be, if the growth continues this way, there's going to have to be a way for us to kind of help sort that cognitive dissonance, because it exactly leads to the Euro Bowl. And the World Cup is a cracking example. There's going to be a whole bunch of people who are coming into Blood Bowl going, I don't understand how anyone can play in the World Cup, and they're just like a team and they just choose their country. Like, they're not the best in this is peculiar to me, because we had this last time. And I was like, okay,
Again, that difference between a big party, or is it trying to be a competitive event? Where's the...
And Blood Bowl is both at all times, which I think is wonderful.
I mean, I would say Pipey, legendary Pipey, who used to run the UKTC, the team challenge, and now we've got team challenges cropping up all over the calendar, but it was always the one, the big one everyone went to. He's now passed that on. There's a new team running that's going to be in Leeds next August. He's now taken on a new brand. He started something called the BB UK Masters, and he's very explicitly said, I want this tournament to be for tryhards. I want to make it very competitive. I want to get some European quality, international level coaches in. I'm going to give one list of tickets that is just for people that have represented their nation, and then there's a list for everybody else, so that all of those can get in if they want to. I'm looking for competitive Blood Bowl. There was a little bit of pushback. Some people didn't like the idea of even one tournament setting out and saying that. I thought it was really brave, and I thought a move that more TOs could do. I'm wondering why we don't get that at the other end. People saying, this is a tournament, everyone's welcome to come. Be aware, we're looking for a fun, relaxed atmosphere. So I know which ones I can go along to and ruthlessly exploit. But wouldn't that happen if it wasn't me? If we do get people saying this isn't a super competitive one, wouldn't we get some tryhards taking advantage of that? Isn't that an issue?
I think that card games have figured this out, which they have a much larger player base. Side events. I think side events solve it. And I know it's easy on paper to say, oh, just run multiple events at an event. But like, if you have, 1,000 people showing up for the super tryhard event, then just run like Dungeon Bowl or Sevens or something on the side. Do pods. Like, it gives everybody a chance. Maybe have some more like silly, awards for that one or something. And that's kind of my 2 sentence oversimplification of how to solve that. But I feel
That's
like,
someone who's gone 0-3 drop before, I think.
well, that's how it works in card games. People
Yeah,
just
it is.
drop.
Of course,
It's
in snooker and pool competitions, they always say the real money is in the tables that are off the competition. You get knocked out in round 2, and then you go into the tables to the side of the competition and make the real money, because that's where the proper money's being made.
So the issue with that is Eurobowl already does that, and the Masters that you said already does that. They're having a regular tournament that is for the hyper competitive, and they have the other tournament.
And I've said it
That
before,
other
this year the
tournament,
the Euro Open was bigger than the Euro Bowl.
and the people are still going to play to win.
Yes.
There's no way to play this game with people not trying to win unless you completely change the criteria and say, you know, one close example would be my Spiky Cup that I run, where you get 4 points for a casualty, 2 points for a knockout. So you theoretically can get more points from just beating the crap out of someone than getting a win. And through the 12 times we've ran it, or 11, 12 times, I think only one time has someone won it without winning all 3 games. That's possible, but still, winning is important. No matter what you do,
It's
people are
essentially a
going to
posh
win.
tiebreaker, but yes.
Yeah.
That sounds like an event that doesn't need a chess clock.
Now, we've wandered into some dark areas, which is about tournament adminning, chess clocks, and just the generalness of Blood Bowl, which I love to do. But I do want to come just back a little bit to the 3 lovely guests that I have in front of me this evening as we start to wrap this up. I did say there was a couple of questions I just think at this time of year I want to ask. So I want to ask each of you what your favourite Christmas present was, but also what was your favourite thing from Blood Bowl and Games Workshop this year. So who's got an answer ready for me on that? Stephen.
Right.
Okay, Ben?
Tough one. It's a tough one to think. So Christmas present, we got our daughter like so much Christmas stuff. So my best gift was something my parents got her, which was this little pink Fiat 500 that she can sit in and we can drive her around.
Oh, adorable. How old is she now?
She's 1. It's a Christmas Eve baby, so she's just turned 1. She's having a great time. So that's wicked because then my dad can take her for a walk and I can do some painting or something. So that was a hell of a gift in that regard.
Okay, yeah, have you got one from Games Workshop this year?
I mean, yeah. I did love the Gnome Team edition. Do you know what? More stunty is more better. They're not going to come in. They're not going to absolutely shake everything up, but they're just giving more people more ways to play. So
yeah, I'm going to give the others some thinking time. I'm going to come in on that. My favourite from Games Workshop this year was the gnomes. I personally hate them. I'm not sure I'll ever coach them. I might do it once just to get the badge because it turns out I'm quite liking getting those badges now. But the community reaction, how delighted all the painters I know were about them, just how much everyone flipped their lid about an unknown team that suddenly arrived and everyone went, wow, can't wait. So even if it's not for me, how much it excited the community, that's how good a person I am. It's going to make me put that as my number 1 pick because, I'm all about sacrifice. My favourite personal gift this year was my chess clock because, it means I'm now going to be ruthless at Blood Bowl tournaments. No, it wasn't. That was a nice thing to have. My absolute favourite gift this year was that my daughter has come home for 2 weeks from university with universally either firsts or very high 2-1s for her second year modules. So I'm very chuffed and excited and proud of her. Kilowoggy, what was your personal favourite and what was Games Workshop's biggest gift to you?
So I just have to agree with you on the gnomes. I mean, not really my cup of tea. I had a friend paint them. I love them. I've played them a couple of times. They're fine. But just the number of people who did not play Blood Bowl that came up to me and was excited about the team was astonishing. So to have that type of impact into the game was a big deal. And then personally, Scott got me some stuff, and while not one thing stands out, I just want to give him a huge shout out because he's always the type of guy who makes sure that everyone around him gets something for Christmas, and he has never failed me. So
fabulous, one of life's givers.
Just the love of another person, I guess, is my gift.
Yeah, well, what a lovely thing. Steve?
So I'm going to be lame and say gnomes. It was literally like the first thought I had.
So that's 4 out of 4. Wow.
Yeah. It was kind of the only thing I honestly got that was GW this year. But as far as gifts, my husband just allowed me to buy an electric bass again. I haven't had one for like a decade, and it was like my first instrument that I learned. I used to, I don't know, have aspirations towards that, but it's been cool getting to revisit that.
Is Johnny Marr one of the greatest humans that's ever walked this earth?
See, I'm more of a Sid Vicious kind of guy, but
okay. I just think in terms of a baseline, I think you have to go a long way to beat Johnny Marr. Ideally with but also some of the other stuff that he's done. I just want to know about next year. New Year is upon us in only 2 days' time. I hope you celebrate it dancing around with just a pair of antlers on and naked, except with the woad that you've painted yourself as I do. But after New Year ends, we'll face another year, 2025. There's rumours, distant rumours of a possible rule set, either in development or maybe coming out towards the end of the year. Certainly, I've heard some of those rumours. What are you hoping for in 2025 for Blood Bowl? As a commentator, as a visible human influencing the world of Blood Bowl as we do, bestriding the oceans with our Colossus-like grip on this sport and game of ours. What are we hoping for in 2025? Kilowoggy, what are you hoping for? I know one thing you're hoping for.
Okay, so in Blood Bowl in general or in just GW?
All of it. All of it.
Okay.
It's a nice big open question.
So obviously, I'm hoping we get the bid for the World Cup. That goes beyond saying. And if that does, it means I have a lot of work ahead of me, and I fully am excited to take that on. But that's an easy answer. The other one is this past year, I have started on my quest of running or playing a tournament in all 50 states and the capital. So I'm at 22 states.
Is there some states you're going to have to start tournaments in order to play them?
Already have. Yeah. So I did the Bison series, which was the broad independent series of the North. So that was basically me driving incredibly long distances to North and South Dakota, Montana. I did one in New Mexico, and at the time, Wyoming. All of those states had never had a Blood Bowl tournament for the NAF. And Wyoming actually was so excited to run that I was running one, they decided to run one themselves 2 months before, and they ran one just last month as well. And we had a couple of guys from North Dakota come down to Chaos Cup. So I've been running tournaments in new areas just to get, check it off my list, of course. But mainly it was just to drive people out and get them to come to tournaments and get them to be part of the NAF. And because I know when we first started running tournaments, there was nothing. There was nothing anywhere. There was one tournament in Dallas the year after we ran our first event. And then it took 2 years for another tournament to pop up there. And we just kept doing them and doing them and doing them. And now Texas has exploded. Florida has exploded.
I'm not sure we should use the words exploded about America, but okay,
Well,
I get your point.
Has saturated the market. But even without getting the bid, my goal is to try to expand the American contingent of tournaments and really, preach the love of the game, the love of the community, and get as many people into it as possible.
I want to hear reports from Alaska, Hawaii, and I know it's not a state, but Puerto Rico. Those guys pay their taxes. They should have representation, both in Washington and in Blood Bowl. No taxation without representation used to be a very American thing. Don't know where that all went. So if you do start holding them in Puerto Rico and Hawaii, I might come.
I will, for sure, Alaska and Hawaii. Puerto Rico is a thought, but I want to at least hit the 50 before the World Cup.
Just a little bit of humour there for my North American viewers and listeners who may understand some of those jokes about Puerto Rico not really being a place. Let's hear. I think we've covered the future. Has anyone not answered that? Did I go through all three of us?
Yep.
No, Ben, I didn't ask you about the future, did I?
So Blood Bowl wise from Games Workshop, more teams. If they do a new edition,
really more races, or just the ones we haven't had yet? We haven't had High Elves through. We haven't had Khemri through.
2 to go. 2 teams of Legend to go. We had a chat about this on the podcast the other month. Like, what happens then? Like, what happens when we hit the wall? Because while there's a couple of Team of Legends, it's all safe because they're getting to them. But it's that next bit. So
there was a troglodyte figure in the very first Blood Bowl one.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have said Vermeer is a race that Games Workshop could bring in and do something with.
They'd have to retcon them significantly, wouldn't they?
They've looked at different clans of rats, snake men,
dryads, squigs. Squig team is the thing I really want from Games Workshop this year. That would just be nonsense. Again, anything that's stunty, that's not going to absolutely twist people, but gives more option to play, because that's wicked. Outside of the realm of that very sort of obvious, I think, and correct answer, I want more opportunities to kind of stream more events. That's my personal thing.
Okay.
Is like how do I get there?
Sure.
How do I make that happen? Maybe abroad, like I don't know. That would be wonderful. I would love to do something like that. So
I agree.
that would have been something I wanted to do for the World Cup, but foolishly we had a baby instead, so it made travelling a risky choice for me. Tiff would have been fine.
Babies are
I
good
may not
things.
have been.
Enjoy yourself with that.
Mm.
They're
So
fun to make
it.
as well. Steve, your future, your wishes, your desires.
I'm gonna start off maybe 10% sincerity, saying we need Age of Sigmar teams so no one can be happy. But
Just mute him, turn him off.
no, I would love to see the competitive side kind of get to shine a little more. But I'm gonna get a little I don't know, community oriented with this answer. I would love to see people be a little more open minded about doing some things, whether we want to call it modernizing, whether we want to call it, having events labeled, casual friendly or more competitive. I would love to see that delineation without it making somebody rage. And I think also with Blood Bowl being as niche as it is, no one talks about it, but there is drama between TOs and stuff. And it
Oh
would be
God, yeah.
really cool if we just kind of came out with some of it and just worked together more. I think if we coordinated, like in the US, it's a good example of how we have the different series, like the Bison series that was just mentioned, or we have the different divisions that's, just where existing tournaments count towards different points and things and rankings.
Yeah, I have to
I
say,
feel
in
like
the
if we got on
UK,
the
we've got a
same page with
fantastic
that.
system now of each little region of the UK, about 4 or 5 different circles, have set up a tournament series. So there's a London tournament series, a South East tournament series, a South West tournament series, a Midlands tournament series. So you can just go to a tournament, or you can spend all year going to a series of tournaments and amalgamating a score towards some end of year goal and ladder. If that's what floats your boat. And to me, the more options, the better. The more numbers, the more things people engage with, the more people will engage. And will find their way of getting enjoyment from Blood Bowl. So I'm all about that. I've always said the more Blood Bowl, the better Blood Bowl. When the raft rises, we all go with it. So I'm all for that. Do you have more to come, Steve?
That's pretty much it. That's the main focus.
Okay, I'm going to cheat slightly. Firstly, my first wish is for NAF. I think it's time to kill Slan. I think there's a point at which you can't just keep making up rules for a team that doesn't exist.
Isn't it
I
such a beautiful, it's such a great microcosm of the cognitive dissonance that exists within Blood Bowl? I think
Yeah.
Slan is the best example of a situation where people want things to be new, but they also, it's like the dog meme, isn't it? No throw, no take, only throw. Like that is humanity, my friend, in
You've
a nutshell.
you've had a couple of years of us keeping them alive when they're not alive. It's a dead parrot now. And we just can't keep finding stars that fit them, finding ways to make their things work. So, time to get rid of the frogs. I do think that if we do, and if NAF gets rid of them, there's more chance that we either get a team with some theme around that, or some other use of the Slan IP that is Games Workshop's, but that won't contravene certain legal test cases that have been used up in the past. So I think it's time for Slan to go. For Games Workshop to do something for me, I want them to kill Prayers to Nuffle. I'm so bored of them. They're so irrelevant. There's one or two in tournaments that are massively overpowered and do change the game. The rest are largely a waste of time. And as my good friend Stig said, when he's teaching the school children to play, and they go, oh, it's a Prayers to Nuffle, and they all roll their dice and they get a draw and they look it up, and it turns out they've just spent 3 minutes rolling dice for literally nothing to happen. That is a complete waste, and he cannot justify telling those children why they've spent that time rolling those dice. Rework them or get rid. I don't think they added anything to the game. I think they were a mistake.
We just use both as brilliant coaching now.
Yeah,
We don't.
I'd be happy with that.
It's quicker.
Although it would prioritise coaches a bit more, of course, so it does change the meta. But let's get rid of Prayers to Nuffle. They're a joke and they're a waste of everyone's time. And then on a personal level,
What
I
about
would
just
like the
getting
fact
rid
that
of
I named this the Blood Bowl Golden Age to be more recognised throughout the community, and for me to be rightly hailed as the greatest commentator of Blood Bowl that I definitely am. So I think that's 3 very easily achieved, very reasonable goals personally there. Now, as you probably said,
When did you label it the Golden Age?
about 6 months ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. When I basically took 6 months off because I was working and I hadn't played a lot of Blood Bowl. When I came back, I looked at the calendar that's on Talk Fantasy Football. And for the 6 months for the end of this year, it was about 3 times as full as it was, say, in 2020 for the whole year. And then I started trying to find a way into those tournaments, and they were all booked up. They'd all sold out. And I thought, and I said, I did a whole episode about it. Is this a Blood Bowl Golden Age? And I think our conclusion was it wasn't in terms of the rule set, but in terms of the player base, in terms of the numbers coming in terms of most clubs are doubling, tripling in sizes, tournaments are selling out in hours, let alone days. I think we need to face the fact we have a Blood Bowl Golden Age going on, and we need to take advantage of that, keep those players, and give them a fun way of doing all of their Blood Bowl. Because I don't think it's ever had a better moment than Blood Bowl is having right now. So yeah, about 6 months ago, and I stand by it. It hasn't quite caught on to the level I would like it to, but I'm going to keep pushing, and you never know. Right, I think it is time we wrapped it up. It's been absolutely fabulous having you 3 guys on. Thank you very much for that. The question that a much smarter person than me told me I should ask at the end, I now usually do. Is there anything I haven't talked about in connections with podcasting, with Blood Bowl, that you hoped to have a chance to talk about tonight that we haven't covered yet? Kilowoggy, anything other than how awesome a World Cup in Dallas would be? So anything around podcasting and that thing? The
No,
supposed hook for this evening's show.
I think one question you asked that we didn't answer was why we do it.
Yeah.
And
So why'd you do
we
it?
kind of danced around, this, that, or these, or the others. And yes, we started doing it because it was just fun and novel. But once you start getting into the community, you start getting the feedback, you start realizing that you are important to people. We did a whole episode where, we lived in Moore, Oklahoma. A tornado came through and Scott truly feared for his life because of the tornado. And I had to walk through a vast area of homes just completely destroyed. We got so many messages from people around the world checking on us. And then we did an episode just completely devoted to that. Had nothing to do with Blood Bowl. And it's one of our best episodes. People love it because it just really gets us who we are out there to people.
Yeah.
And that's what they care. They want to hang out with someone while that shares the same interests. And that's what podcasts are. Everybody in chat, I don't have it open, but they're here hanging out because they enjoy it. They see us as friends. And that's really the biggest thing I get out of it is I've made friends around the world from this.
Absolutely.
And true friends.
Yeah, I think I noticed that when I was Twitch streaming, which I hope to get back to in the new year. It's not necessarily the best players that attract people. It's the people that interact with the chat. It's the people that form relationships with the viewers. It's the people that the viewers feel they can relate to. That's who gets the audiences and I think that's why people like the podcast format just in general. If we come circling right back to my intro, I think it's having a moment now because we are so isolated. We are in little pockets and we live our lives. And with a podcast, you feel you get to know those people, those humans. People that have heard 50 episodes of me waffling on, know when I'm cracking a joke, know when I'm being serious. And I think they like some of that familiarity. I think that's why people do come up to you at tournaments and go, hi, and how are you? And you've never met that person before in your life.
And when they do, they're coming at you as a friend.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
As someone who's starstruck.
Yeah, you're in their friend space.
You're my friend, and I finally get to meet you.
Yeah, they trust you, they understand you, they listen to you. And if they don't, they've wandered off to a different podcast. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Thank you. Ben, anything we haven't covered, anything you want to say again?
I mean, Kilowoggy crushed it then, to be honest with you. That is the best thing about it. I mean, that's the whole thing is you're just talking so that someone else can listen and then they can respond, and it's a turn-based conversation for a turn-based game, and I think it's perfect.
Yeah,
great way of saying it.
Absolutely. Steve, let's end with you.
Okay. So for one, I want to encourage anybody who has half an interest, give it a shot. I mean, if worst case you end up not liking it, ask people for tips. Like, we're here. We're all doing this for passion. We kind of talked about that earlier. The other thing I want to add, and this is more of a personal note, there have been 4 times in the past that Andy Davo has been in a thread on the internet, and I have said, fight me. And he has ignored me every time. So officially, let's go.
If you're going to call someone out, call out the big beasts of Blood Bowl, that's for sure. Okay, well, you heard it here first. No Bribe Fowl is challenging Andy Davo. Surely
stream
a
that?
match for his
Hell yeah.
lifetime.
Let's go.
That'll do only good things for your viewing figures, I'm sure. All I want to say is thank you very much for coming on, guys. I think podcasting is a really interesting thing. I think it's having a moment now. I don't quite understand it. I love doing it. And I think Kilowoggy absolutely, as Ben said, he nailed it for all of us there. The level of intimacy we have coming into your ears and your home, sharing our thoughts with you, and you allowing us to do that is a real privilege to have.
Mm-hmm.
And when people come up to you at a tournament or just in life and know who you are because of that, if we don't know who you are, please don't be offended. We desperately want to. We love that permission you've given us, and we're very grateful for it. And it's what keeps us going. There isn't money in this. We all put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of thought into what happens here, even if it seems ludicrously casual and slightly accidental. I promise you only some of it is. And we're doing it because we love doing it. Simple as that. So if you're enjoying it, then really do. Everyone that contacts you to say so, everyone that writes a letter or a post or anything on the Discord or leaves any kind of interaction, even negative on the YouTubes, I appreciate you. I appreciate that you've taken the time. Even if you're saying I didn't like that, then I'm going to think about it. As you heard tonight, I'm going to ask other people about it even sometimes, because it does matter. And I do accept that it's a privilege and an honour. But I also think we all agree we need to be as honest as we can be. We're not going to suddenly say things for the good of a tournament. We're going to say what we think is the right thing for Blood Bowl. Now, if you've seen this before, you know I've traditionally asked people to wave and say goodbye Teletubby style. It gives me a really easy point to find in the edit. So thank you very much if you've been here live or if you're listening. Thank you for your time. That was Blood Bowl, the One World, One Blood Bowl, number 57. Podcasters talk about podcasting in a podcast. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
There we go. That's the end of that's the bit that I'll cut out, and that's where we will send the